Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra Arevalo. I'm the Director of Community Health and Wellness at Montefiore Nyack Hospital. We are happy to bring you today Steve Monson, and he's the Trauma Program Manager. He's going to be talking today about pedestrian safety. He's not only a great nurse, and he really knows his stuff about trauma after having worked in the emergency room also for many years. He's also my neighbor across the hall here. So believe it or not, we're like only a few steps away. But I love working with Steve because he knows what he's doing, and he's also an educator, right? So he's very passionate about what he does, and I love the way he talks. So he was sharing his presentation early on with me, and it's amazing. So I can't wait to really hear it from your mouth, Steve. And I don't know if there is something you would like to talk to us about yourself.
Well, myself, well, you said a lot of nice things already, but yeah, I actually started out as a paramedic. I worked paramedic in North Dakota, which this isn't a big issue in North Dakota. I found out when I did the research. There's not that many fatalities in North Dakota with pedestrian, but not a lot of people walk in North Dakota.
At
least
yeah,
not
they
in
have
the
those
streets.
trucks, right? In North
Yeah.
Dakota. Wow. Okay.
So I did that until 2009, and then I went to nursing school and I started working in the emergency department here at Nyack. And a couple of years after that, I took the job as the educator in the emergency room, and then the trauma program manager job opened up. So I moved into this job about 3 years ago. At the end of the first year of COVID,
Yes, I remember that. Oh my God, that's true. Yes. Well, we're very happy to have you, and now in your new role as trauma program manager. And just a reminder to our attendees that this space is for you. So please make it interactive. Send us questions and comments and emojis, whatever you want to send us. Let us know that you're engaged in the Q&A, the chat. And now, without further ado, let's get started. I'm gonna zoom out for a little bit. I'm still gonna be here, but I'm just gonna turn off my video so that all the attention is on you, Steve.
Oh, good for me. Huh? That's okay. And so good morning. So we're gonna talk today. I guess it's afternoon now, but good afternoon. So I'm just gonna talk about pedestrian safety a little bit. A lot of it's common sense. But over the last couple of years, I said I've been doing the trauma program manager for 3 years, and I've just been watching the number of people getting struck by vehicles increase. So I talked to Sandra earlier this year, and she got me a spot to present. And I just found out today that they designated October as Pedestrian Safety Month. So we're getting a little ahead of that, but we're close to October as it is. So it's fairly timely on that. So just a little bit about what the job is here. I work in the trauma department, and I'm the program manager. What we do in the trauma department is we respond to all activated traumas in the emergency department. We have a set criteria for which patients, when they come in because of what mechanism or how they got injured or how they're presenting, we activate a trauma, which gets a whole team there quicker and gets things started a little faster. So we respond to that. Big part of the job is maintaining a trauma registry, which is just a database of all trauma patients. When we talk about trauma patients, a lot of people think it's just people that are severely injured or come in from car accidents, but we keep track of everything. Falls at home, somebody breaks their ankle, gets admitted for that. Basically, anybody gets admitted for any kind of a injury. We keep track of that, and that reports to the national database. So we do that quarterly, report data to them. Provide education to the staff related to trauma, and then this is part of the community education based on identified problems. So like I said, I've identified that pedestrian safety is a problem. Nationwide, it's a bigger problem. So this is the Nyack numbers right now. That was 2022. You can see this little piece of pie here. The 7% is actually the number of people that were struck by vehicles, which 7% doesn't sound like a lot, but that is about 70 people in the year that were struck by vehicles. One of the nice things here, we've had 70 people struck by vehicles. We've only had one fatality, which is still too many, but it's a lot better than the national average. Nationally, we have a large, I'll get to that in a minute, but there's a large number of motor vehicle accidents that actually end in the person dying. So we're happy with that number only being one, but we're not happy with 7% of the people being struck. So that's, like I said, 70 people in 1 year is a lot of people getting hit by cars in a small area like this. The big one here is what we have done the presentations in the past on is falls. That's our biggest numbers of injuries are people falling, and a lot of that is just falls at home with hip fractures, ankles, ribs. So that's the big piece of the pie. 21% is car accidents. 10% is other, which is stuff that doesn't fit into specific categories like injuries that using machinery, burns, scooters, a lot more scooter accidents, and ATVs, things like that fit into the other category. So really, pedestrian struck are actually the third highest group that we have here after falls. Oops. Yeah, we're just going crazy. After falls and motor vehicle accidents, pedestrians struck is the next largest category. So it is a problem. In the statistics right now, New York State, we have 300 people killed annually in the state. They have 15,000 injured yearly. So a lot of people are getting struck by vehicles around the state. And surprisingly, the numbers in New York City aren't that high for people, especially with the people being killed. It's at a slower rate of speed usually. We're going to talk in a minute about the differences in what happens with speed. Speed kills. So they have a lot of injuries, but not that many fatalities. And nationally, there's about 7,500 people killed annually by being struck by a car. So large numbers. This is one graph that's kind of, there's a few possible explanations for what's going on here. You can see in 1980, there were just over 8,000 fatalities. These numbers are a little different than the 7,500 I got. It's a little bit higher, but it's a different source. But you can see the trend. And somehow we managed to get it down to about almost half of that, down to 4,000 in 2010. And after 2010, it started a climb back up again. And then in 2020, it just kind of shot up back up to pre-1980 numbers. A couple of the areas they really said are possibilities of the fatalities in this area is one, COVID, which we get to blame for a lot of things, but a lot less people are using mass transit and a lot more people are driving, and walking. So more people walking, more people driving equals more people being struck by vehicles. Another trend that's kind of from the 2010 up to the 2022 is a larger number of Americans that are driving SUVs and trucks, which usually if a person's struck by a truck or an SUV, it's a bigger vehicle and it's a higher vehicle. So the actual impact on a car is usually going to be, like in the thigh or in the hip. The SUVs usually hit in the body, the torso, or the head. So they're hitting more vital areas. So there's more fatalities involved in the motor vehicle accidents with people running into pedestrians. So those are a couple of explanations they've kind of talking about. They're not really sure, but those are things that have changed over recent years, and they are problems. So this is just from 2019 to see how it's up 19% in just 3 years of people being struck and killed in the U.S. So this is what we've had in NIAC. Just want to get our numbers because national numbers are good, but our numbers are a little closer to home. You can see in 2020 we had 18 people struck by vehicles, which was 3% of our total number of trauma patients seen. The next year it was up to 43, which is 4.5%, and the next year we were up to 71, which is 7%. So we pretty much over doubled the number of people that are being struck by vehicles in just 3 years. So it's not a trend we want to see keep going. We like to get it going the other direction. So like I said before, speed does kill. They say a pedestrian struck at 35 miles an hour is 5 times more likely to die than at 20 miles an hour. 35 miles an hour is not that fast either, right? That's A lot of the roadways we're seeing people being struck on are like 9W or 303, which, you know, the people are doing more than 35 miles an hour on those. So we've been lucky. And at 50 miles per hour, 75% of people that are struck over 50 miles an hour will die statistically. Like I said, luckily, NIAC, the statistics have been a little different. A lot of the accidents we've had were higher speed accidents on, you know, like on 303, like I said, 9W, places like that, and we've only had one fatality, so somebody's looking out for us, I guess. Okay, so the one of the first things in pedestrian safety is, you know, go back to everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten or before. Look both ways before crossing the road. You know, so look left and then right and then left again, because the left's what's going to hit you first. So you want to make sure that the road is clear. And I like this guy. I'm getting older. I kind of relate to him. I look both ways before crossing a one-way street. That's how little faith I have in humanity. So it's true. You can't trust the drivers. You have to look both ways. And if you're on a one-way street, you know, people don't obey the traffic laws. I actually was guilty of that once myself in Canada, because I just couldn't find where I was going without going down a one-way road. So it happens. So look both ways always, no matter what kind of road it is. And use crosswalks. This is a big problem, probably more so in the city, but even in and around Nyack, a lot of people are crossing between crosswalks in the middle of a block. And on some roads where, like I said, 303 and those, there aren't a lot of crosswalks, so people are not using the crosswalks. But if you stick to the crosswalks, statistically, you're a lot safer. Other things people do is try to beat the lights. If you see the hand is flashing, or the little guy is flashing, or the counter is down to 2 seconds, you know you can't make it across the street in 2 seconds. So don't count on pedestrians yielding to the right of way like they're supposed to. So play it safe. You know, if you're an Olympic sprinter, you probably can't make it across the street in 2 seconds. So use the crosswalks, use the crosswalk lights, and don't be a jaywalker. I thought this would be better if this had actually been a jay, but I guess it's a pigeon. But so jaywalking is just anybody crossing the street on an area that's not in a crosswalk. So, and you can see by this slide, statistically, nationwide anyway, 76%, almost 80% of the pedestrian fatalities occurred outside of the intersection. So only 22% of people, 23% of people were struck while they're in an intersection versus outside of the intersection. So the intersections are safer. I mean, I know it's sometimes, if you're on a road that looks like nobody's around, it just seems easier to just cross where you are, but best to play it safe. Get to the crosswalk. That's what they're there for, right? I'm guilty too, but it is a way to cut down on the number of injuries and fatalities, is to use the crosswalks. Another big one that I see this when I come to work early some days or go home late, and it's just dusk to dark. Clothing's a big issue, right? This guy here, he's got a nice, he's ready for day and night. You know, say wear bright clothes during the day and reflective clothing at night. Even if you're out walking, having the tennis shoes on like these people have with reflectors on the back, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. So during the day, bright clothes. At night, reflective clothes. You can see on this picture, there's got a dog and 3 people walking. You can hardly see the person that's wearing all dark clothing, but even just having the fluorescent green or the pink on shows up better at night, even during the day as well. They do make a lot of reflective clothing. There's only one problem with reflective backpacks, and I know we're having interactive here, but when we get to one of our other slides, when you're walking, you're supposed to be walking towards traffic, so the reflectors on your back aren't going to do you a lot of good, right? When the car's coming at you. So if the person's obeying the rules and they're walking towards traffic, then these wouldn't do them a lot of good having a backpack on with a reflector on it, but and then don't forget about the animals, right? If you're out walking dogs, even if you have good control of your dog, they may decide to, run out into the street. It's nice to at least have some reflective equipment on the dog as well. Even a reflective collar, just something they could see, so the driver can see the dog if they come out into the road. They're not expecting it, but they do that. Especially some of the areas, like you're walking in some of these areas where if you don't want to walk on the grass and there's very little walkway, if you're that close to the street, it's really easy for the dog to get out into the street. So don't forget these guys. Okay. And this is just another graph showing that most of the fatalities happen at dark. In 2021, we got 5,600 fatalities that were in the dark and only 1,400 that were during the daytime. And really, most of the people are out more during the daytime, so there's a lot more pedestrians actually out during the daylight hours. So this number is really even more significant because it's at least 4 times as many people, or about 4 times as many people getting struck at night than during the day, when there's probably a lot more people out, shopping downtowns and walking around during the daytime hours than they are at night. The one group that we do get into in pedestrians here, we're going to talk about a little later, is people that are out at night drinking. So alcohol and walking doesn't always mix well. I know we're not supposed to drive drunk, but the alternative is walking. It's not a great alternative either. So find the Uber people. And then the days of the week, this is just kind of another way of looking at it. The days of the week where most of the fatalities and pedestrians being struck happens on Friday and Saturday, which is also obviously when probably more people are out at night, and also when more people are out at the bars. So just kind of illustrates the point a little more. And this is the dark versus light. You can see how during the daylight, a lot less people than at night. So this is even the dark with the lighted area, and this is dark without a lighted area. So even in the well-lit areas at night, there's still an increase in the number of people being struck. So, and the big one now, I think they didn't say a lot about distracted pedestrians. They don't have a lot really of data right now on what group of people really increased a lot. Like so they said the SUV and the truck owners have increased a lot since 2010. This group has also increased a lot. I mean, how many people do you see now walking that aren't looking at their cell phone or talking to somebody on their cell phone while looking at it, doing FaceTime or whatever? I mean, every time I see more than 3 people in a crosswalk, I'm pretty much guaranteed one of them is looking at their phone or walking down the street. So distracted pedestrians is a huge thing. So you shouldn't be looking at your phone and talking. If you have, they even say if you have headphones, earbuds, and you're talking on your cell phone to somebody, you're still somewhat distracted. It's a little bit better because you can see what's in front of you. You're not looking down at the screen, hopefully. But texting definitely takes your mind off of what you're doing, and you can walk out into traffic without really checking. And the other group is the people listening to music while they're walking, which would be me. I have to have music. I have music going pretty much no matter what I'm doing. So, but it's not always good because you are not able to hear, especially with some of the really nice headphones now that have the really nice noise canceling headphones that you can't hear anything outside of your music. Those are the people that are going to be like this guy. He's into his music. He's not hearing anything going on. So you won't hear if cars are coming. You're stepping out, somebody honks, you're not going to hear it. It's kind of dangerous. So best to leave the music home, not take it out on the road unless you're not going to be crossing any. But even then, if you're just walking along the side of the street, it's still nice to hear what's going on. So it's a nice thing, but a bad thing, right? So I should get some headphones like that. I had to buy these for work because these are kind of nice. They don't actually go they sit kind of on the top of your ear, and you can actually hear everything that's going on around you while you can still hear the music. So those would be a little bit safer driving around or walking around, because you could still hear the traffic and other people yelling or whatever else might be going on. So best to be in your environment when you're and alert while you're walking. This is a big issue in most areas. This is how a sidewalk should look, right? Nice and clean and open, but this is how most of the sidewalks probably realistically look. Which besides being dangerous because you might trip and fall, which would be another story. That'd be our largest number of people that come in. A lot of people choose not to walk on it just because it is a tripping and walking hazard, and decide the street's a little smoother and easier to walk on. So we need to do a better job of keeping our sidewalks maintained. And then the other thing is the overgrowth of the sidewalks. Like here we got a walking or bike trail. It's not very wide, but what width there is taken up by somebody's cut the tree a little bit away, but it's still hanging over and still going to be a hazard and a nuisance. And this one, then the bush is completely grown out to the sidewalk, takes up the whole sidewalk. So your option is to either go through the bush or go out into the street. And I think most people are probably going to go out into the street. And if you're going to do that, you want to be really, I mean, it's not a good situation, but make sure and be really aware of what's going on before you step off the sidewalk into the street. Sidewalks are one of my pet peeves in the world here, but and always walk facing traffic. You know, the big benefit to walking facing traffic is you see what's coming. If you're walking with the traffic to your back, you don't know what's happening behind you. So always walk facing traffic. Much safer. And this is one most people, it's not a New York thing, right, to make eye contact, but if you're stepping into a crosswalk, even if the vehicle looks like they're stopped or about to stop, just make sure and look over at the driver just to make sure they did see you. You know, they might be slowing down because there is a crosswalk, but didn't even see what they're doing. They might be looking away for a minute and don't see you. So make eye contact, and best to make eye contact and maintain eye contact until you clear of the vehicle. I know some people might think that's, I don't know, intrusive or a little too much, but you have to be safe. So this guy's doing a good job. He's staring right at that driver. And then the other one is watching for vehicles that are turning. A lot of people, when they're making a turn, their main focus is probably looking over into the oncoming traffic to make sure they're not getting hit. They may not be paying attention to who's in the crosswalk going around the corner, especially if you're close to the end of the intersection. You know, they may not even see you at that point. Might be in their blind spot with the front post of the car, and may end up getting struck there while you're actually in the intersection doing the right thing. Still have to watch out for the vehicles because they are not necessarily doing the right thing. Yeah, the other statistic I didn't mention, I wrote it down, but I didn't mention, was people walking facing traffic. Statistically, 73% of people who are struck while walking are struck from behind. So they're walking against traffic, and that makes up almost 75% of the people that are struck by vehicles were struck while they were walking with their back to traffic. So, and we all know don't drink and drive, but don't drink and walk either. And see, this guy's hopefully he's not going to get up and walk, but this guy's actually walking and drinking. And you'll see that on the weekends. People are out having a good time, and they say, well, I can walk home so I don't have to drive, and the next thing they know, they're getting struck by a vehicle because they're not really minding the rules when you're intoxicated. So you can see the pedestrian fatalities in 2021. First of all, the pedestrian fatalities, 30% of the people struck and killed in 2021 were above the 0.08 blood alcohol content, which isn't really that high. I mean, it's legally intoxicated, but it's not a real high blood alcohol. But at least it made up 30% of the people, especially in the the younger age groups. We're all running around 35% of the fatalities in those age groups were alcohol related. Once we get to 75, we get a little smarter about drinking and walking, I guess. Okay, so that's the pedestrian's responsibility part. Now we'll talk about driver responsibilities a little bit. Anybody had any questions, Sandra, that popped up, or I didn't see the?
So far, we're good.
Okay. So far, we're good. I like being good. That's right. But I don't mind answering questions. So we'll have time at the end, though. So okay. So one of the biggest problems, and we see it all the time, is distracted drivers. So that's why, as a pedestrian, you have to be. It is the driver's responsibility to not hit pedestrians, but there's a lot of things on the driver's side that are affecting their ability to watch for pedestrians. I know this is a reenactment, but I've seen it happen more than once in my rearview mirror coming to work. That somebody's got a cup of coffee and they're doing their makeup, or I actually saw somebody last week that was driving and shaving. It's like, you're not concentrating too hard if you're doing things like that while you're driving. I'm sure we've all been guilty of it, but it's really not a good practice at all. And this is the one I can't do because I'm just not coordinated. I wouldn't be able to text and drive no matter what, because for two reasons. One, I need my reading glasses to text, and the other was I'm not that good at texting. So, but the younger people, they can text really well with one hand, so they think that they're able to text and drive and watch at the same time. It's really not possible. Even if you look down for a second to see what's on your text, is enough time for somebody to be out in front of your car. So distracted drivers is a huge problem. And I said, it's getting worse and worse all the time. I know the police are always cracking down on people are texting and driving, but even the newer cars. I had a car that we had to lease, but it ran out just before COVID, so we didn't release another car. We went with one car, but it did have the text that would play over your radio, and you could respond to the text. Even then, you're not paying 100% attention. Same with taking calls. I mean, it's better to take a call through the car's audio system than to pick up your phone and answer it. But you're still not 100% engaged as a driver when you're talking on your phone and driving. You're still not really 100% into it. So Sandra came back.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Steve, is and I'm guilty of what I'm gonna say, like even when I'm driving somebody somewhere, I can get so distracted in the conversation that I pass the street that I'm supposed to be crossing on, even if I have my phone talking to Bluetooth or somebody next to me. It's like it really, I've been just trying to say you can get really distracted very easily. And okay, maybe passing the street that you needed to cross is not dangerous, but at the same time that you're missing that, you can be missing somebody who's crossing as well and then cause an accident. Yeah, it's easy to get used to using these things all the time. I'm talking to people is one thing, but it's really easy to get used to using your phone or whatever all the time when you're in the car as well as walking or otherwise. The car we have now, you can't connect a phone while you're moving, and that makes me mad when we're driving home and whoever's in the passenger seat can't even connect their phone if they want to play music or something through their phone, because while the car is not in park, you cannot make any changes on the phone connection. So that kind of drives me crazy sometimes, but then I realize it's a good thing. So it's a lot of these things, they're irritating, but they're good things. It's not necessarily what you want to do, but you got to do it. So I'm guilty of most of these things except for the texting, because I just can't text. But
And I'm trying, since I started this job, I'm trying to be more careful driving as well. But I did work, like I said, I did work as a paramedic for a lot of years. So as far as driving goes, you know, that's one job where you really have to really pay attention to what's going on, because it seems like everybody's out to kill you when you're driving an ambulance. I don't nobody seems to hear that siren for some reason. I don't know. Okay, and this is a big one that yield to people in the crosswalk. In town, it's not so bad, but if you're on some of the streets, like I said, some of the smaller highways like 303 or 9W, or anywhere where there is a crosswalk, that's not necessarily in an ideal spot for yielding to pedestrians. You still have to, they still have the right of way. Besides the fact that nobody really wants to run somebody with their car and kill them, it's also illegal to not yield to someone in a crosswalk. So we should be doing that. It's a nice little crosswalk area here, but so yeah, I know sometimes it's, even if you're doing the speed limit, sometimes you come up and you're getting close to the crosswalk and somebody starts out, it's really hard to always stop, but if possible, you should. Obviously, if there's a car 2 inches away from your bumper, which they shouldn't be, you don't want to slam on the brakes and get into an accident. But if you've been watching ahead of time, if you saw somebody standing alongside the road next to a crosswalk, just assume that they're probably going to step out. You always have to assume the worst for people that they're not paying attention, and they may just, or maybe somebody says, "Hey, I got the right of way, I'm going," and they go. So this is a big one too. Don't pass someone parked at a crosswalk. If a car is sitting at a crosswalk, letting someone across, there's a reason why they stopped. They're not just sitting there because they don't know where they're going or they're taking a nap. If somebody's actually stopped at a green light and there's probably a reason, and it's probably because there's a pedestrian coming out from around the vehicle. This place, you probably see him in this one, but if that was a van or something, you wouldn't see what was coming across in front of them. If you don't stop, you're gonna nail somebody in the crosswalk. So always think about why somebody is where they are, right? If somebody else has stopped, I know the New York thing would be to get over and honk at them, but there's probably a reason. So have to be careful. This is actually, we see a fair amount of people getting struck by vehicles that are backing either out of a driveway into a sidewalk, or another big area is in parking lots. They're low speed collisions, so nobody's probably going to die, but it's still not good to get struck by a car no matter what, even if you just get a lot of bruises and bumps, bruises, and abrasions, scratches. No, it's still not a good thing. So that's why we don't see a lot of fatalities. We do see a lot of people that have some, serious injuries, a lot of fractured hips, broken femurs, broken ribs, and head injuries is another big thing. So, you get, even if the car doesn't hit you in the head, when you fall down, you can strike your head, and that you cause a bleed, and that's not good. I said, even fatalities aren't necessarily the only bad thing. They only report, a lot of the reports only cover fatalities, but I mean, there's a lot of bad injuries that you don't die, but you end up going to rehab. It's a long process. So even in parking lots, we do see a fair number of people hitting parking lots. They're usually, hopefully, pretty low speed, somebody backing out of a parking spot, but still enough to, mess up your day and keep you out of work, or keep you out of doing what you want to do for a while you're recuperating from the non-life-threatening injuries that you got from that. So be careful. I mean, nowadays it's nice. Most of the cars have, backup. A lot of them have backup cameras now, which is good if the person's behind you. But in this case, I don't think she would walk into the side of the car, I hope. But if the person's not behind you yet, it's not going to see it. Obviously, they're getting fancier now with cars that warn you when anybody's in your blind spots or in the area, or some of the other vehicles, the self-driving or the automatic stopping vehicles. I was reading a little bit about that they said that it's pretty good, but they're still about 23% of the time during testing, the vehicle with the automatic braking didn't recognize a pedestrian. They only recognized something a little bit bigger like a car. So that wasn't a good number. That's pretty significant. A quarter of the times the vehicle's not going to stop, so you can't rely on that. Another big one is school zones. School zones, I mean, most people probably think that, between 7 and 3 in the afternoon, that's when the school zone is in place, but you don't know. The sign here says speed limit 20 when children are present or when the light's flashing. So if they're having something at school, after school, or in the evening, or whatever else, you don't know where the kids are going to be running out into the street in that area. So it's a high risk area. So it's best to slow down around the school zone, even during non-school hours. You don't know when it says when children are present, you don't know when they're present necessarily. They could come shooting out of anywhere, which probably not at the high school area, but you start the elementary schools, the kids are gonna playing ball, run on the road. It's just not a good area to be speeding. At least slow down during that time. And the big one, right? Don't drive under the influence. I know people that do actually not just drink then drive, they actually drink while they're driving, which is very dangerous. Leaving a bar intoxicated, not good. And now we got we have the other legal substance. Marijuana is legal. That's another substance that definitely will interfere with your ability to pay attention and know what's going on in your surroundings. And I don't see a lot of people smoking weed and driving, but I do smell it when I drive around. So people are driving and using illegal substances, or well, I guess legal substances now, which can be mind altering. So you really have to pay attention as a pedestrian, because you don't know what else, who you're sharing the road with. So as I said, and again, same kind of numbers. Almost 30% of the drivers that struck someone with their vehicle were intoxicated. These statistics are just with alcohol. We don't really have any statistics yet on marijuana incidents. Nationally, it's not legal nationally, so I don't know if the federal agencies are going to be doing a lot of studies. I'm sure New York is. We have to report it on our trauma registry. If the person, most of the time, the problem is most of the time the drivers don't come to the hospital. So, and if they don't smell of alcohol and they don't seem intoxicated to the point where somebody would do a, field sobriety or a breath analyzer, there is no analyzer for, the narcotics, no analyzer for THC out in the field. So these numbers would be kind of hard to find on the drivers. It's easy to find the numbers on the victims, because we do drug testing or alcohol screening on a lot of the trauma patients. Not necessarily it's not for a punishment reason. It's just if somebody is drinking and they get struck by a vehicle, we just want to identify that, and we're required by the National Traffic Safety and American College of Surgeons, which oversees the trauma at the hospitals. They require us to screen every person that comes in for alcohol if they're involved in an injury before they're admitted, just so you can get them just a consult with social work or psych, just to say, do you feel like you have a problem? And if they say yes, you can get them the proper resource. Not necessarily that they're doing it to punish anybody. We just want to make sure, provide help to anybody that maybe doesn't know how to ask for help, but we identify it when they come in as being a potential problem, and get them a consult. And if they say they have no problems, then they probably have no problems. But we don't want to miss out on even if somebody's doing risk-taking activities, and it's related to alcohol, and they don't really know they have a problem, it's best to, give them the chance to identify that and get some help when they can. So that's a big one, the alcohol, 30%. Pretty significant number. Okay, we're up to questions again. They got their hands up.
Thank you, Steve, for your presentation. And I think that you've touched on very important points here. And one of the recent ones that you touched was on driving under the influence, especially now that, some substances are legal. So how do we disseminate this information, you think? Because I wanna, we have some participants here, and I'm sure that a lot of people in the community would like to hear this information because, drinking can be legal at to a certain point, but when you go over that limit, you're not only putting your life at risk, you're putting everybody else's that is around you. So how did you suggest that we make more people understand the importance of that? And there have been multiple public health campaigns, but we still see it happening. So why do you think that is?
A new thing that they, it's really difficult. A lot of people, when you're drinking, you don't realize you're to the point where you shouldn't be driving. A lot of people are to the point where they don't even know they're impaired, and they still go get in the car. Nobody's stopping them. I know there's been things that they've talked about implementing over the years, like even having where you have to blow into a breathalyzer to start your car. They have that technology they were looking at, but then everybody, civil rights, civil rights people say, no, that's infringing on people's privacy. But so, and also, I know in North Dakota, there was one bar that had a breathalyzer machine that you could check your blood alcohol or your breath analyzed alcohol level before you left. But what do you do with that? If they stopped doing that, because if they have the machine there and somebody uses it even just for fun, to say, well, let's see what we blow on the alcohol. Well, if they put that there and they don't do anything about following through and saying, whoops, you tested, over the legal limit, we can't let you drive, then they're held responsible. So that didn't go over very well. So it's, other than educating, there's not really a great answer for, that's why if you're walking, you just assume whoever's coming at you is not paying attention or drunk. And then you're, it's not.
And also something that you just said too, is that there might be a hit and run, and we don't know if that was, somebody drunk or high or something like that, because obviously, it's a hit and run. We don't have any records. Do you know if there is a large amount of accidents in Brooklyn under the hit and run category?
Surprisingly, New York hasn't been that bad. It's in this area, in the city, I imagine they have more, but there's so many people see what happens there. You got 100 people at every intersection, somebody's going to see you. So, but around here, we've had a couple, I don't know, they were out on, the road, like I said, roads like 9W at night, you may not even realize that they hit the person. If you're driving a big SUV and you hear a thump, you go, you don't see anybody because you knocked them off the road onto the side of the road. You don't even know you hit somebody. You'd be like, I don't see anything. So they keep going. So we don't have numbers on how many of those, we don't keep track of if they're hit and runs or not, but I don't think it's a huge, people are pretty responsible around here too for, most of those people stop and try to help the person after they hit them, and just, those are intoxicated drivers. Another group I didn't really talk about, though we had last year, was, I think the one fatality that we had last year was somebody working on a garbage truck. So, somebody didn't see them coming around the front of the truck and they hit them. So that's another group you got to watch out for. I know it's in some of the ways they park, it's like, you get mad when you come in, but they're doing their job. You got to kind of give them space, because they may not be paying attention. You need to. It's one thing I learned with, driving ambulances you have to watch for everything, because you could kill somebody. You're going to kill more than one person if you're responding to a medical emergency, or if you have a patient in the back and you hit somebody, you may kill the person you hit, or you might kill the person that you're taking to the hospital. So, you have one patient in the back and another one in the front that you just caused. So I've always been a really cautious driver, which drives my wife crazy sometimes, but I just, it comes with a job, I guess.
Yeah, well, but it's better to be extra careful, I think. I always, when my daughter was learning to drive, I always told her, you have to think of your car as a mortal weapon,
Oh, yeah.
Every time you're driving, you're a killer in action. That's what I always, still to this day, I tell her, because still she's a new driver. So I'm like, remember, this is like a loaded gun. Like, you have it on you all the time, and you have to be careful. So yeah, what you're saying is true.
And they made cars safer, but it's not, less people are dying in car accidents than, when I started. I don't want to say how old I was, but how old I am, but in the early 80s, when I started working as a paramedic, we'd have fatality accidents all over the place. People were dying in accidents. Nowadays, it's not real common for people to, even though they're going faster, driving smaller cars, they're better built, and there's more safety mechanisms, and people wear the seatbelts. I mean, back then there's so many people were not wearing seatbelts. So
yeah, I was just gonna say that, at least the seatbelts, and what you say, safety measures in the cars, like the automatic braking, the airbags, but the pedestrians, they don't have any of those.
No.
So when we're walking, we have to be really careful, because we really don't have anything to protect us other than those lights that you were showing. That's about it.
Many years ago, when cell phones were just getting popular, if I was smart, I wanted to make an app that, would use a forward-facing camera, and you could see on your screen while you're looking down. You could also see what's going on ahead of you. But I'm not smart enough to do that. So if anybody else is, it'd be nice to be able to. If you're going to be looking down at your phone, especially like in New York City, you see the people there. I mean, I think they walk.
And I think that
look up.
Yeah. And I think that the most important thing here is that we all know that all these accidents are really preventable. This is something that if we learn and we follow what you just told us and all of that, we will be less likely to have such an accident. It's really all about prevention.
Yeah, they even stopped using the term accident in the trauma world, because it's just called motor vehicle crashes instead of motor vehicle accidents. It used to always be, because it just sounds like something that, whoops, but
yeah, that you could not prevent, right? I always thought about that. Like, accident is something that just happens. You don't know how, but if it's preventable.
Yeah, most are.
Yeah, most are. So it's really a crash. I like that. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for being here. Thank you for your
thank you for letting me do it.
I hope we saved many lives with these presentations. So
that'd be good.
Thank you to our participants. Next week, we're going to be talking about opioids. So
that fits into this too. So
yeah, hand on hand with this one. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about opioids use and misuse, and especially now that we have a lot of new drugs out there that are very bad for you. I think it's very important to learn more about them and be ready in case we know somebody who might be going down that path. So thank you so much for being with us today in Community Chats, and I will thank you, Steve, and I'll see you next week.
I'll look forward to the next one here.
Thank you.